For 6 days and 7 hours in March 2021, the hulking container ship Ever Given was stuck in the Suez Canal. Under most circumstances, a boat stuck in a distant canal would be a story of minor intrigue at best. Yet this stuck boat just so happened to block 12% of global trade in the middle of a pandemic that was already stressing supply chains. Oops. With people still bored and stuck inside from the world's longest winter, this business nightmare turned into a pop culture phenomenon. Supply chain management became a spectator sport, and the internet came up with some of the funniest memes I've seen in a long time. And yes, in true 2021 fashion, the memes included sea shanties too. On March 29 at 4:30 in the morning, local time, 14 tugboats and a king tide dislodged the unlucky Ever Given. If this were a movie, this is the point at which the credits would roll. The story is over and the crew of the Ever Given would sail off into the sunset. Maybe the captain of the boat would win an Oscar. But this isn't the movies. While the rest of the world moved on, the sordid saga of the Ever Given continued. But before we get to that, a word about Fulfill-Rite. Shipping your own orders is a pain, and when you're overwhelmed with the amount of them, it's easy to feel as stuck as that boat in the canal. But you don't have to ship your own orders. You can pass the responsibility on to a fulfillment center instead. It's much easier. Fulfill-Rite is the most trusted name in order fulfillment. Click the link in our description to request a quote today. If you were paying attention to the media around the Ever Given, you could be forgiven for thinking that once the ship was freed, it just drove off. However, much like when you get into a car accident, it doesn't work that way. Having a ship run aground like that for days on end is really bad on a number of levels. The Ever Given was pulled into the Great Bitter Lake, which is a large lake located in the middle of the Suez Canal between the southern entry point, the Gulf of Suez, and the northern exit point, Port Said. Think of it like a section of highway where a 2-lane road becomes, for a brief time, a 3-lane road to allow for passing. While pulled over, divers inspected the vessel for damage. Very luckily, the Ever Given was not damaged during the incident. This is the second major stroke of luck experienced by the Ever Given, which, let's not forget, could have been stranded for weeks without the help of an unusually large tide. This luck also extended to other boats that were stuck in traffic, but fortunately, all were able to pass by April 3rd. So the boat passed inspection and the traffic jam eased off. All's well that ends well. Well, not exactly. The Ever Given got sued by the Suez Canal. No, that's not a typo in the script that I'm reading, and you didn't mishear me. The Suez Canal Authority, the SCA, was pretty mad about the Ever Given blocking traffic. In particular, the SCA was not happy about all the revenue they lost during the blockage, or the cost of the salvage operation. The ship was later seized in Ismailia, a city in Egypt along the Suez Canal, upon request of the SCA. The SCA was requesting compensation to the tune of $916 million, which included $300 million for salvage and another $300 million for loss of reputation. The ship manager found this decision by the SCA to be, quote, extremely disappointing. Yeah, I'll bet he did. Last we read about it, May 25th, an Egyptian court rejected an appeal to free the Ever Given. That means the Ever Given and most of its crew are still stuck in a port in Ismailia. The SCA's requested compensation has since dropped to a much lighter $600 million, and the case is still pending. But there's no telling how this is going to shake out. It's hard to overstate just how unpleasant this must be. We all know how rough quarantine is, and now to do that in a metal tin can with a bunch of other people in an unfamiliar country for some unknown and unknowable period of time, that must be really difficult. For a while, there were a lot of concerns that the Suez Canal blockage was going to damage the global economy. This was not entirely unfounded either, because as stated above, the Ever Given came unstuck earlier than any reasonable person could have expected. That's not to say that we got off scot-free though. Semiconductors were already experiencing a shortage, which affected the price of electronics. Garden gnomes, of all things, were hard to come by. Beyond a few examples like that, it's hard to blame any specific shortage on the Suez Canal blockage right now, as we're still experiencing the bizarre impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic. For example, lumber has been unbelievably unbelievably expensive lately, but that's largely unrelated to the canal blockage. And as an addendum right here, in between the time that I wrote this script and when this video is going to drop, Wendover Productions made a fantastic video on supply chain shortages, which I'm going to link in the video as well as in the description. Perhaps the most important impact to come from the Suez Canal blockage was that it scared freight shippers and other supply chain experts half to death. Plainly speaking, the Panama Canal and the Suez Canal are the two major global shipping choke points. Combine that with the fact that container ships have been getting continuously bigger in size, an accident was bound to happen, and it's a small miracle that it wasn't worse. It's hard to know exactly what experts make of situations like the Suez Canal blockage, as many of the conversations take place in boardrooms and on private Zoom calls. From our research of public-facing headlines, though, there are 7 common themes in the postmortems that experts have already written. Number 1. Boats are getting too big. Since 1971, the carrying capacity of container ships has increased 16-fold. Between 2011 and 2021 alone, boat carrying capacity has doubled. As of the time that you're watching this video, the largest ships can carry nearly 25,000 containers, or as much as 200 feet wide. The Ever Given had a capacity of 20,000 containers, making it pretty big. Most of the time, boats pass through canals without incident, day in, day out. But a stiff wind can ground a boat, and that's exactly what happened to the Ever Given. Container shipping is not held to the same reliability standards as, say, aviation. Number 2. The Suez Canal needs to be widened. Danish-based shipping company Maersk is pushing for a widening and deepening of the southern Suez Canal. Being a gigantic company, the Suez Canal Authority is likely to comply with their request. Number 3. The supply chain is surprisingly vulnerable. There are 2 narrow canals that control an enormous amount of freight traffic in the world. On top of that, a surprising amount of fires and wrecks have plagued container ships in the last few decades. Reading about the freight shipping industry is like reading about aviation 40 or 50 years ago. Number 4. We're all connected, for better or worse. Modern trade means that you can get goods from any country in the world at a great cost. However, the minute supply chains break, there is serious trouble as many countries over-specialize in specific industries. Number 5. Stranded workers have been in the spotlight. In general, workers around the world are fighting for their rights. Seafaring employees often do their work in silence as their work is hard to understand and far away. But when you have a bunch of people stuck in port for months on end, that's a lot more noticeable. Seafaring is long, hard, thankless work, and the sea shipping industry is going to have to reckon with that. If you want to learn more about what seafaring life is like and how it's difficult, check out the book 90% of Everything by Rose George. It came out in 2013, and it's more relevant now than at any point in the last 8 years. Number 6. Freight forwarders have increased their ability to find alternate routes. Between the COVID-19 pandemic and the Suez Canal blockage, freight forwarding companies have learned how to be creative. Sometimes sea voyages are broken into trips with sea, train, and road segments, and other times sea shipping is replaced with air shipping. Freight companies have, out of necessity, figured out multiple ways to transfer goods across the world for any given route. Number 7. Lean supply chains are falling out of favor. For much of the 2010s, the lean supply chain reigned supreme. It was efficient and inexpensive and the perfect way to get everything to arrive just in time. Until it wasn't. As it turns out, operating without backup plans has left a lot of companies in the lurch lately. As such, resilience is starting to look more attractive than raw efficiency. In many ways, the story of the Ever Given is a story of incredibly bad luck followed by incredibly good luck. The impacts of the Suez Canal blockage were not nearly as bad as they could have been, although a lot of people are still dealing with the fallout. The workers stuck in port in particular really got a raw deal. Still, this might just be scary enough to inspire business leaders to change things up for the better. Here's to hoping. Managing a company's supply chain takes a lot of work, and it can be overwhelming. At Fulfillrite, we provide warehousing and order fulfillment services. That means we'll ship orders on your behalf, leaving you with more time and happier customers. If you're interested in our services, click the link in our description to request a quote today. That's all we have for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. In the comments below, tell us about the worst traffic jam you've ever been in. I'm curious to see if any of them are worse than the Suez Canal. Until next time.